Happy New Year, first of all, and we're going to celebrate a brand new year by looking at something that you might know as Swiftonomics. So that's right, the economics of Taylor Swift, right here on the pod. So enjoy.
Daniel, are you a Taylor Swift fan?
Who's that? That's some 15th century agronomist, right?
Okay, be for real, Daniel. If you hadn't heard of her, then you would be pretty much the only person in the world who hasn't heard of her. She's so famous when her tour rolled into town, it actually lifted the country's economy.
Oh, yeah. She's the one from the Federal Reserve Beige Book, right? Because there's such a huge economic impact.
Yeah, well, Daniel's going to Daniel, isn't he? That's such a Daniel answer.
That's just so me. Well, the fact is that she really has had an impact, and an actual economic impact. She had the first tour that grossed over $1 billion.
Right.
And, we're talking like fans spending over $1,000 each, according to Barclays, on things like the tickets, the transportation and the accommodation. So genuine economic impact.
Yeah, I've seen some of my friends posting their outfits when they're on tour for some of this on Instagram and the like. But she's a cultural icon, right? But in general, following the pandemic, the trend has been towards more live in-person events. People can hear any song from any artist pretty much immediately on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever they're getting their music. But these live experiences, you can't get those through a screen.
Right, but there's nothing kind of magical in the economics of it. It's quite simple. It's economics 101. Taylor Swift is a rare commodity, so supply is low for getting actual in-person listening to her. But of course, demand is high, so she can charge high prices for it.
Exactly. And that's how we're landing this plane, because we're going to introduce you to someone who knows all about this. We're going to introduce you to Misty Hagnes. She's written a book all about Taylor Swift's economic influence and how she can inspire other women to be successful.
Yeah, Misty, thank you very much for taking the time for us. I want to just start out with, how did you feel when you first saw Taylor Swift live?
So I first saw her live in the Eras tour, and it was a phenomenal experience. I went with my teenage daughter. It was in Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and it was just filled with a whole bunch of fans who were nice and sweet and wanted to get to know each other. And it was like nothing I had ever experienced, especially in that football stadium, because I've been to Chiefs games, and it was a totally different experience.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you've described it a little bit, but what makes her so exceptional, Misty, that it would actually have an economic impact wherever she goes?
Yeah, so I think the main force that really drives Taylor and drives fans to her is her authenticity. So she's very, very authentic in her writing. She writes about her own lived experiences. She's very willing to be defiant against kind of cultural norms and traditional norms that tell women how they should be or how they should act. And she does it in a very authentic way. And I think it's just really relatable for young women today. It's really relatable for anybody who's human. And just that draws so many fans towards her.
Yeah, and you write all about it in Swiftonomics. And your book seeks to inspire women with lessons that they can learn from Taylor Swift. Now, obviously, you're not saying that you have to be as successful as her, but isn't the point that she is unique? She's an ultra rare commodity, so it's hard to learn from her and to copy what she does.
So you might think that off of like first blush, because she's now this billionaire. She's been super successful. She had a lot of things going for her as a child in terms of family support and connections. And so that might make her seem unrelatable. But when you listen to her music and when you listen to the stories that she writes into her lyrics, they are anything but unrelatable. And so, she walks a path that is a little bit unique in the sense that she feels very distant from us, but at the same time feels very close to us. And has a couple of tools in her toolkit that have helped her be really successful in her career. And they're tools that anyone can employ. So it's not, in that sense, that's not out of reach.
Yeah, you mentioned these tools, one of which is reinvention. You pretty much lay out how she's been treated like crap. And what does that tell you about the way successful women are seen?
Yeah, I mean, her story is very common for any woman who has drive and determination. Women are often kind of historically or traditionally, especially in the workplace, expected to do as we're told. And so, oftentimes when women are very, have strong leadership skills, have maybe skills that look more like manly skills, if you will, it is very hard for us to progress because that is not what society expects us to do, and we usually get punished for it. And you can see that Taylor's career is a cycle of society and others attempting to punish her for that. But the kind of unique awesomeness of Taylor is that she might get bogged down in the moment, but she always comes back swinging, and she continues to thrive.
Misty, one of these things that I kind of struggle with when I'm thinking about feminism and Taylor Swift is whether or not she really is one of these feminist icons, or maybe she's just, milking her fans, and that's how she became a billionaire. I'm talking here, her latest album had, 11 vinyl releases and then 8 different CDs. That was according to Variety. Maybe even more are going to be released. So how do we get here? How do we land this plane? Because it seems to me like she might just be taking advantage of how awesome she is, in your words, to get more money from her fans.
Yeah, so that's a typical critique that we see of Taylor. And there are male singers who have done similar strategies who face less critique. And so part of this, I think, is we have this expectation that women are supposed to be caring and providing. They're not supposed to be in it for money. Taylor is doing just what any savvy business person would do. If demand were to go down and people were to stop purchasing, 12 different variations of an album, she would stop producing 12 different variations of an album. So I personally don't see it as a problem. If there is, this burning demand for content from her, she's going to continue to provide. Everybody has a choice as to whether or not they want to purchase all these variations. Human agency is a real thing, and she's just employing a marketing technique that seems to be working for her,
I guess. But my internalized misogyny aside, is she just, I don't know, kind of really acting like a man here?
She's acting like a very smart business person, which I would say we often associate with men.
Okay, but I mean, if we kind of dig a bit further into this kind of capitalism versus feminism dynamic. So, I mean, I know when I see there's an increase in female representation in a lot of popular media, if you look at Netflix TV shows and this kind of thing, but we see also that it's often very surface level. We see a lot of the girl boss character, for example, the woman who picks up a sword and who can fight as any other knight and can drink the men under the table and, who can tell dirty jokes just like the men. And it feels woke, but it's the opposite. It's reducing women to acting like men. So are we being kind of pressured to see this as the route to success, that women need to act like men in order to be successful? And if not, if we want to park that, what does a feminist interpretation of being successful in capitalism look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so let me start by saying there's a couple of things about Taylor. She's very glittery. She likes pink. And so a lot of times, I've spoken with a lot of feminists who will say, oh, she's not a feminist at all because she fits into this very traditional mold of visually looking how girly girls are supposed to look. But then if we look at her, business tactics, she's, very intentional. She's open to giving fans what they want. And in terms of kind of thinking about how women's roles are portrayed in the media and in entertainment, one of the things that I think Taylor does very well in her lyrics and in her music is she describes really genuine lived experiences of women, not only herself. So you can think about the songs like Clara Bow, which is about a silent movie actress from the 1920s who, Clara was born into this family with a mom who didn't really want a kid or a family, with a dad who was an alcoholic. And Clara ended up becoming very, very famous just off of pure raw talent for acting. And Clara became so famous as the it girl in silent movies that she was able to redefine her contract. There was during those times, and probably these clauses still exist today, but there was a clause called a slut clause, which is essentially if the actor or actress got any negative press for being promiscuous, scandalous, that the agency could cut them from their contract. And Clara was so powerful as an actress that she was able to get the agency to pull that clause from her contract. So, go ahead.
No. I didn't want to. I don't want to interrupt you on Clara Bow. Please continue.
Yeah. So, you've got women like Clara Bow who, found her own agency through her own power and her talent. You have women like Rebecca Harkness, who married an oil billionaire and then was blamed for her husband's death because she let him, party too much and didn't take care of him. And, Taylor now owns Rebecca's mansion in Rhode Island, and Taylor has these parties there in July with all of her girlfriends, or historically has. And so one of the things that I think Taylor does well is she finds other women from the past who have really detailed, authentic, lived experiences as successful women, and she writes lyrics about them, and she's inspired by them. And, if you listen to Taylor's lyrics, yes, there is some traditional, this is how women act, maybe this is how men act, but it goes way beyond that. And it's one of the reasons I think why she's so successful.
Right. You're talking about some of these historical figures as they relate to Taylor Swift's art, right? But one historical figure that you brought up and life, but one historical figure that you brought up in the book was Adam Smith, right? And I'm going back to my kind of history classes from high school here. But one of the things that you painted a really interesting picture of was some of the invisible labor around Adam Smith. And I'm curious, how would the world be different if Adam Smith was actually, Amy Smith?
Yeah. So I love this thought exercise because, I am an economist by training. And so I grew up in a field and a profession that's very male dominated even today. And one of my goals with this book is to really explore and push on, just as Taylor does with some of her lyric writing, but to push on these expectations that we have about the world around us. And so, one of the things that Taylor does is she takes stories, like Clara Bow or Adina Sackville, who was this woman who got married multiple times in London in the early 1980s. And Adina's nickname was the Bolter. There's a song called The Bolter. So Taylor takes these, stories that were written from the perspective of dominant society or from the perspective of men, and she rewrites them from the perspective of women. And so that's what I was trying to do there with Adam Smith. It's like, okay, so Adam Smith is one of the founders and fathers of kind of modern economics, and he's responsible for this for the theory of the invisible hand, which is that government doesn't need to intercede, that the baker on his own right will bake the bread because he'll be able to sell it, and that'll help him live. And one of the things that I point out in my book is that Adam, he talked about the baker, he talked about the butcher. I don't know, was it the candlestick maker? I can't remember who the third one was, but he never talked about, his own experiences and how all of these men that he was talking about in society who would do this for their own benefit, how were they able to stay in the bakery all day baking the bread? How were they able to get dressed in the morning or put on clean clothes? And one of the interesting pieces about Adam Smith is that he never married. He was a single guy. He lived with his mother until she passed away. And it was his mother who made his meals and, washed his clothes. His mother allowed him to be the economic thinker that he was. And I think this is just representative of the problems within my profession and within, the theories of economics, is that we develop these theories that are very, it's like the beer goggles, but it's like a gender goggle, and these theories make sense from the perspective of these old historical men, but lots of times women are left out, and so there are female economists around the time of Adam Smith, and they are like the Jane Austens. They wrote books that are very much about economic themes, but they were never considered economists. They were considered literary, writers. And so I think it's important to, help us become consciously aware of that. And I think when we do, it starts to shift the way that we think about the world and the way that we think about our own daily lives and our studies.
Watching a sneak preview of our podcast, The Dip, and if you want to subscribe and watch full episodes, just scan the QR code that's on your screen right now or tap the link in the description.